One client asked me, should I buy a new launch? I told them yes. 3 years earlier, another family asked me almost the same exact question. I told them no. Same Singapore market, same rising property prices, but completely opposite advice. And honestly, this is where many buyers get confused already. Because people keep asking, new launch better or resale better? But after doing this for decades, I think this is the wrong question. Because the real issue is not just which property makes more money. The real question is, what kind of life can you realistically live through comfortably for the next 10 years and also make money at the same time? Because a strategy that creates wealth for one family can become a very stressful mistake for another family. Now, before I even share the two client stories, let me answer the main question first. Generally speaking, yes, younger condos and the right new launches do tend to grow faster during the earlier years. And later in this video, I'll show you actual data across 20 years that demonstrates this very clearly. But that does not automatically mean that a new launch is the correct choice for everyone. Because profitability is only one part of the decision. The second part is, can your family realistically live through the process comfortably? Most buyers never study this properly. But once you understand this, you'll see why some families should buy new launches, while others are actually much better off buying resale instead. Now, the first family contacted me around 3 years ago. At that time, they were interested in a new launch I was marketing. Now, normally, right, most people assume that property agents will surely immediately push the new launch, especially if they are marketing their project themselves, right? But after understanding their situation properly, I actually advise them not to buy the new launch. Why? Because they have a very big family, 8 family members, young children and elderly, ranging from the age 5 to 80 years old. After doing the calculations for them, their budget was around 2.2 million, and they wanted something big, at least 1,800 square feet or bigger. And the moment I heard that, I already knew that new launch is not possible already. Not because new launch is bad, but because for that budget, the size they wanted was very hard to find. And then I visited their home. They were staying in an executive apartment. Honestly, the place was huge. The living room was so big that I joked that they probably could hold ballroom dancing there. And I think even small wedding dinner also can. 3 Chinese banquet tables can fit in nicely there. And that moment confirmed it for me. This family was very used to space already. Now imagine asking them to suddenly squeeze into a much smaller temporary rental unit while waiting 3 to 4 years for TOP. Very difficult. And this is the part many of us underestimate. People calculate property profits very carefully, but they don't calculate life disruption. The packing, moving, temporary rental, storage, children adjusting, transport, school arrangements and tuition routines, lack of stability, and moving house once is already very tiring. So for a family of 8 people ranging from young children to elderly parents, honestly, to move twice, the stress level is very high. So in their case, budget-wise, not ideal. Lifestyle-wise, quite disruptive. Logistics-wise, actually it's very troublesome. And that's why resale would make more sense for them. I didn't ask them to just consider which property can make them the most money. Instead, I asked them to consider what kind of setup can they realistically live through comfortably for the next 10 years. And this is completely different thinking already. So eventually, they bought a resale EC that was around 5 years old. Still relatively young, still enjoying the strong growth phase, but without all the disruption of renting and moving twice. And today, they are happily staying there. Big space, stable family environment, and they also bought another investment property, which I have been helping them rent out. Now, does that mean that resale is always better? No. And this is where the second couple becomes very interesting. Because honestly, their profile is almost the dream setup for upgrading. The husband had already bought a new launch earlier. That project will TOP in around 3 years. So currently, they are staying in another condo under the wife's sole name. And unlike the first family, they were completely okay with renting temporarily. And this is already a very important difference, because flexibility changes everything in property planning. Then they asked me 3 questions. First, does it still make sense to hold on to our current condo? Second, if we sell, should we buy resale or new launch? And third, should we just continue holding and do nothing? Now, their condo is around 10 years old. They bought at around 1.2 million, and today it's worth around 1.8 million. Honestly, very good growth already. About 600k profit. Around 50% gains already. Actually, the condo already did its job very well. But here's something that many owners never think about. After the 10th year, most condos enter a slower growth phase. Not zero growth, still growing, but slower. Maybe around 3% annual growth on the average. Whereas carefully selected newer condos and new launches can sometimes continue compounding closer to 5%. Now, before people tell me in the comments, yes, I know that many new launches grew much more than 5% recently. But I prefer being more conservative because honestly, the fast pace at which condo prices grew over the last few years after COVID is not that normal. And honestly, this is where many buyers accidentally sabotage their retirement planning because they focus too much on the entry price and not enough on compounding speed. And this is where many Singaporeans misunderstand compounding. 3% versus 5% sounds very small, right? But the outcome becomes massive. And this is where buyers get trapped. They compare prices, they compare PSF, they compare locations, but they never compare timelines. So for example, if the wife buys another property at 2 million, and if that compounds 5% annually over 10 years, it could potentially grow to 3.2 million. But if she holds on to the older condo or buys another older resale condo growing closer to 3%, the outcome could be only about 2.6 million. And the difference is 600k. Same market, but different compounding speed. So completely different retirement outcome. And for this couple, that difference matters a lot because the wife is around 45 years old. And honestly, this next 10 to 15 years is usually the most important financial window in a person's life. Strongest income, strongest loan eligibility, and still enough runway for compounding to work properly. Miss this window, and it's very hard to recover later. And this is something I feel many Singaporeans underestimate. People think, never mind lah, just wait first. But waiting also has a cost. Doing nothing is not neutral. Sometimes doing nothing is the most expensive decision. And so I told them honestly, they were actually in a very strong position right now. Their condo is still desirable, still relatively young, can likely sell off at their peak pricing. And with the sales proceeds plus loan eligibility, the wife can still reposition into another property around 2 million comfortably. Of course, they also explored resale, value option also. For example, buying a 5-year-old resale condo, there are advantages. They can move in immediately. There's no need to rent for 3 years until the husband's new launch condo is ready. Rental for 3 years can cost easily about 120k. So yes, there are savings. And a younger resale condo can still enjoy decent appreciation. But they may also miss the stronger early compounding phase that some new launches experience. So again, there is no universal answer. The first family needed space, stability, and practicality. So resale made more sense. Another couple had flexibility, structure, holding power, and time. So new launch can potentially make more sense. Same market, same country, same property cycle, but completely different strategy. And honestly, this is the mistake I see many people making today. They copy property strategies without copying the income, the age, the family situation, the risk tolerance, or the flexibility behind these decisions. And this is dangerous. Because property is not just about upgrading lifestyle. This is something I feel very strongly about after doing this for so long. Your property is either helping your retirement or quietly working against it. Now remember the first question I asked at the beginning of the video? Are new launches actually more profitable than resale launches? So I decided to study something more practical. I tracked 5 condos across Singapore over almost 20 years, and I wanted to compare 2 very specific phases. How condos perform during their first 10 years versus after they cross the 10-year mark. Because this is usually the real decision buyers are making today. Do I buy something newer with stronger growth potential, or something older that may be more practical and suitable and stable? All these 5 condos TOP around 2005, all have above 300 units, all are 99-year leasehold, and all are in north, south, east, west of Singapore. And so I wanted to study 2 things specifically. How much did they grow from year 1 to year 10? And what happened after year 10? Did the appreciation slow down significantly? Because this is the part most buyers never study properly. Okay, so these are the 5 condos that we'll be looking at. Number 1, Kerrisdale, represented by the red line. Number 2, Savannah Condo Park, represented by the yellow line. And number 3, Casablanca, represented by the brown line. And number 4, Grandeur 8, represented by the green line. And finally, Blue Horizon, represented by the grey line. Okay, don't worry if it looks a bit messy. I just want to show you how the numbers are being derived. And later I will show you the findings in either a table form or a chart form. So let's start with Kerrisdale. From year 2006 to year 2015, it grew by about 108%. So per year, it grew by about 10.8%, almost 11%. Okay, so let's see how it did in the next 10 years from year 2015 till 2025. So it grew only by 52%. So you can see that the growth rate is halved from the next 10 years. Okay, let's look at Savannah. From 2006 till 2015, it grew about 76%. So that means per year it grew about 7.6%. Okay, let's look at year 10 till year 20. So from 2015 to 2025, it grew only by about 37%. So per year it grew by about 3.7%. So let's look at Casablanca, the brown line. From year 2006 till 2015, it grew by about 90%, which is about 9% per year. Let's look at the next 10 years. From 2015 to 2025, it grew only by about 29%, which is about 2.9% per year. Okay, so let's take a look at Grandeur 8. From year 2006 till 2015, it grew 93.59%, which is about 9.3% per year. Okay, now let's look at the next 10 years from 2015 till 2025. For the next 10 years, it only grew by 50%, which is 5% per year, which means that the growth is only half of the first 10 years' growth. Okay, so let's look at the last condo, Blue Horizon, represented by the grey line. So in 2026 to 2015, it grew by about 80%, which is about 8% growth per year. Okay, let's look at the next 10 years, 2015 till 2025. So it grew by only 39%, which is about 3.9% per year. You can see their growth rates more clearly here. And what I found was very interesting. Generally, the younger condos within the first 10 years did experience stronger appreciation. After that, the growth usually became slower and more stable. So yes, generally speaking, younger condos and newer launches do tend to enjoy stronger growth during the earlier years. But whether resale or new launch is correct for you still depends on your life stage, your flexibility, your holding power, and your retirement timeline. Because buying property is easy, but buying the right property for the next 10 to 15 years, that's the difficult part. And in the next video, I want to show you something even more important. What actually causes certain condos to outperform others? Because honestly, the things most buyers focus on are sometimes not the real drivers of growth at all.